the 34b, and we started learning about the amounts of hadassim and arabais that you need. That was on 34b. On 34a, we had learned, we mentioned, of course, the brisa with aravais and tzaftzapha, that the arava has the three signs that makes an arava, or that shows that that it's the correct species of an arava. And one was that it's red, stem is red. The other is that it's long and narrow leaves. And the other is that the leaves are smooth at the end. At the edges, they're smooth. So those were the symbols of a kosher arava. The signs of a tzaftzapha, a non-kosher tzaftzapha, was that the tzaftzapha is a white stem, and its leaves are rounded, and its edges are similar to a magal, to a sickle. So those were the signs that we had. The tzaftzapha, which is not kosher, the signs of an arava. And we mentioned Taisvis over here, which Taisvis says that there's a reason why we have to say the signs of the both the kosher arava and the non-kosher arava, the tzaftzapha. In other words, Taisvis says it mentions the signs of the kosher arava. It should be enough. You don't need the signs of the non-kosher, anything that's missing those. So he says, no, it's not really true, because there is a type that is going to be kosher even though it's missing. So I had mentioned to you yesterday, so it sounds from there that these signs are just symbols. They're not like really making it kosher, but they're just symbols that will inform you that it's kosher, but it's not an actual reason why it's kosher. It's not that because it's red, that's why we need that arava, because the stem is red, because the leaves are. That's not what makes it kosher. That's just a sign that that's the right species. But there is a species that's also kosher, but it happens to have the leaves that are not exactly smooth. They're actually similar to a sickle. They are going to be kosher. That's called the chilfa gila, which the Gemara talks about. The chilfa gila is actually a kosher type of arava. Tzaftzapha is not. Tzaftzapha is not kosher, but so therefore the brisa goes through what makes the tzaftzapha non-kosher. What are the signs that a tzaftzapha is non-kosher? And from that, you get the implication that it's possible that a chilfa gila will be kosher, which is correct. Now, if the brisa only said the three signs that make an arava kosher, that symbolize that an arava is kosher, you would think that a chilfa gila is not kosher, and therefore it had to mention the other rule about the tzaftzapha, and that tzaftzapha has all these three non-kosher signs. Then we will get the right conclusion that chilfa gila is kosher. Then the Gemara. The Gemara had a little contradiction. The Gemara explained that this is the meaning, that chilfa gila is unique, which basically the understanding seems to be that chilfa gila is from the correct family of aravas. At least that's one way of looking at it. That in other words, the tzaftzapha maybe is not the correct family, and the chilfa gila is the correct family. Okay, it doesn't have exactly the right characteristics, but it's the right family. The other way of learning is no, the tzaftzapha is also the right family, but it's not kosher. It's a min arava, but it's missing certain characteristics, and because of that, it's not kosher. Chilfa gila is so close to being kosher, it actually is accepted. It's it's the right family, and it's very similar to the kosher. And the pasuk says arve includes, it's inclusive. There's something that we're gonna include. If you want to include one thing, chilfa gila. If you want to understand arve to be inclusive, it should include chilfa gila. That would be another way to understand the Gemara. Now, the Gemara also touched on this other interesting thing, that the fact that it has another name to it, it's not just called Arava, but it's called the Chilfa Gila. So therefore, you might think that it should be kosher, and nevertheless, it's going to be kosher because it's called Arve, because the pasuk says Arve plural. So there's room to say that it's not kosher, because it has that, it's called an arava, chilfa, gila, but there's room to say because it has that extra word gila to it, that makes it non-kosher. And on that, the Gemara says, no, but it's called arv, it says arve. Arve gives it this sort of like expansion. It expands the rules of aravais, that we can expand, we can include one more thing, something else. And that the Gemara includes this type of arava called the chilfa gila. Now, the next Gemara was really just mentioning things about different terminology and how names of things changed, and people should be aware of them, especially when it comes to halachas. And even if it's not applicable to actual halachas, it could apply to the laws of buying and selling. And one of those cases was the first case that it mentions, that Rav Chizda mentions, is that they now call aravas chalaftas and chalafta aravas. That's a change, and it's important to know, because chalafta is what the term for tzaftzfa is, and so basically it's either kosher or not kosher. This would be if you switch the names, and you're going to end up saying the wrong halacha. Imagine you give a drasha in shul and you say, everyone, aravos is what you need. Make sure not to use the chalaftas, the tzaftzafos. What are people going to do? They're going to end up using the wrong thing because the names of them switched. So therefore, you got to make sure you are clear what you mean, because these two names switched. The Hilchas Lulav, that's an important, it would have an effect when it comes to the laws of Lulav. Then the Gemara talks about the shofar. And shofar is a little confusing, because the Mishnayos in Rosh Hashanah do have a little contradiction there. If you're supposed to, there's a discussion among the commentaries. What the Mishnayos, the Mishnahs in Rosh Hashanah, it's a little unclear. Are all shofars kosher? Then one place it says you're supposed to use a ram's horn. One place one opinion says you're supposed to use a yael. So the question is it saying that all shofars are kosher, just a ram's horn is better, or is it saying you have to use a ram's horn? There's discussion in the commentaries over there. But anyway, the way Rashi learns this Gemara here is that the way our Gemara says it is shofar in chatzotz rasa were switched. What is shofar? Shofar means a bent shofar. And chatzotz rasa means more of a straight type of horn. Rashi says that it's not of an ayil, not of a ram. And the understanding that is not sure. She put her as kofov chatzitzras of pshuta veina shel ayil, And my nafkamina l'shayfer shel Rosh Hashanah. It says, what's the difference? The difference is a shayfer of Rosh Hashanah. That for a shayfer of Rosh Hashanah, you need to have it's supposed to be bent. That's the understanding. And Rosh Hashanah, you use a shayfer shel ayil, and it shouldn't be straight. Now, what's a straight? What is a straight one? So in Rosh Hashanah, it says, Rashi over here doesn't say it, but in Rosh Hashanah, Rashi says the Yael, or the Mishnah there implies it, that Shel Yael, the Mishnah really says it, I guess. In Rosh Hashanah, the Mishnah says it there. It's Shel Yael Pashut, it says, of Yael. I think I translated Yael wrong yesterday. I said some type of deer. It's really I mean, there's a discussion in the commentaries what it is. One opinion is it's a wild goat. The other opinion is that it's a female lamb. So I'm not sure if these horns are exactly straight, but relative to a ram, these are much more straighter. And so the understanding of Rashi here that it's straight, chatzotz rasa, is that it's some type of an animal, because he uses pshuta, but it's not an ayil. It's some type of animal that's straight, and they switch the names now. They call this the shayfer, and they call that the chatzotz rasa, or they call that the the way it used to be switched to the opposite. And of course, you need to know for Rosh Hashanah. Now, on Rosh Hashanah, are you allowed to use the one that's straight? So there are opinions that it's fine, but the thing is that you that the mitzvah and amuvchar, the proper way to do it is to use a ram's horn. So there are different opinions, or it could be that it's not fine. According to the Rambam, that if it's even b'diavad, if it's not a shayfer of an ayil, it's not good. The Rambam says such a thing. So the way the Rambam learns this Gemara, it actually flows very well. That you need a shayfer shel ayil, you need shipura, you need it to be the shayfer of an ayil. According to the Rambam, it fits similar to the previous case. Chalafta and aravta, one is kosher, one isn't. Here also by shofar and chatzotz rasa, one is kosher, one isn't kosher. According to the other opinions, not necessarily so. That if it's other shofars are also kosher, and except a cow, of course, a cow is not kosher. Cow's a shofar, but others are kosher. It's just maybe it's not the ideal. Now,
well, when you say except a cow, is that what is the male to the cow?
the ox.
An ox is also not good.
A bull. A bull.
A bull. Bull.
A bull. So a bull is not good either?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. But the
A
Mishnah
male
uses the case cow. Yeah.
A male cow is not. Is there anything else about the shayfer about it has to be from a male or a female?
I don't think so. I don't know that there is such a any rules
No,
like
no,
that.
because we've casually said,
But we always use a ram because the ram is mazkir the zchus of Yitzchok, of Akedas Yitzchok. So we davka want a ram, but the question is about the others: are they kosher? So the Rambam seems to have an opinion that that if it's not a ram, invalid. But anyway, bottom line.
Others accept that the horns have to be turned.
Well, even if they're not, even if they're straight, the yesh leimer that it's still kosher. The Mishnah there says opinion that shel yael pashut, the yael that's straight is kosher. So there are such opinions. The question is in halacha, is it acceptable?
You know the story about yesh leimer? There's a guy who passes away. I mean, all his life, whatever he lived, he passed away. And then when he goes up to the judges, they say, "Oh, you're going to have your piece now of Gan Eden." So they're taking him to an area with castles and gold and this and that, and then a little smaller, whatever, housing projects. And on the road, there's a outhouse, and the Malach pulls up and says, "Here you go." He goes, "This is Gan Eden?" And the Malach says, "Yesh, that's how he lived his life, and that's how he got his life.
Right. Okay, so the bottom line here
Rabbi,
is, yeah,
Rabbi.
just one second. Bottom line here, I just want to conclude my train of thought that the shofars, the term shofar got switched with chatzotzros, and chatzotzros got switched with shofar. So make sure you know which one is which according to halacha. So you have the right one, either the one you need for Rosh Hashanah, or at least the one that's ideal for Rosh Hashanah. Make sure you know which one is being called, or how you're teaching these laws. I did just want to say one thing, that the shofar, and that there is another meaning here of chatzotzrasa, which normally the word chatzotzrasa means a trumpet. That there is a way of learning the Gemara that they switched the word shofar for a metal trumpet, and so of course that's not kosher for Rosh Hashanah. But that was the term used, that they switched the word chatzotzros with shofar and shofar for chatzotzros, and so there is such a pshat. Okay, yes, I think I don't know who's first. Yehuda.
Is the reason that we can't use the horn from the cow because of the golden calf?
I'm not sure. I have to look it up in the end of Rosh Hashanah. It probably has a pasuk for it, although it sounds like a good reason. I'm not sure if that's what the Gemara says. I have to look it up in the Gemara there, the end of Rosh Hashanah.
That's what I was going to say.
Oh, so is that what you remember? That's the reason? Is that what the Gemara says, or are we just guessing?
I believe that's it. That's my memory of it.
It sounds good. Okay, we got some input from everyone here. It sounds like a good reason, but I'd have to look it up. I don't remember the reason for sure.
Rabbi?
Okay. Yes, Moshe.
So based on what they're saying, then Abraham Avinu during the ram appeared before him, so that Yitzchok wasn't sacrificed, the Akedah. So I'm wondering if that had something to do with that.
I'm not sure what you're asking. We said that the reason that we use the ram, that there's a mitzvah min hamuvchar, or maybe according to the Rambam, you need to use the ram, is because it reminds Hashem of the ram. So I'm not sure what you're adding. Okay. So then we said that there's another example of these type of things, and what is called a shulchan, a table, psurta, psura. There's a big table, a small table. One used to the big table used to be called psura. Small table was psurta, and it changed. The names changed, and now a small table is called psura. A big table is called psurta. Anyway, my nafkamina, the Gemara says, what's the difference about those things? When you're buying and selling, you got to sell what the language is. You got to, if you sell something that used to be called that, it's not going to be a proper sale. It's going to be a problem with mekach with choshen mishpat. You're going to be messing someone up. It tells if you use something that they used to be called some way, but now it's not called that way anymore, and something else is called that, it's a problem. You're tricking them, and the sale is you're not acting honestly, and you're basically stealing. You sell it to them and mislead them.
Okay. You're misleading them.
Now, Abaye gives another case, and that was a case where it's about something not so practical for us. It's something that sheikhtim need to know, or in the slaughterhouses, there's a needle inside the stomach of the animal. So there's the beikosi and there's the chovlila, the two parts. There's two of the four stomachs of the animal that have different halachas. And with the pay, you got to know which one is which, because the halacha of what used to be called beikosi is that had had like two layers of covering, and therefore if there was a needle that punctured one, it's not a problem, because the food that's in that one stomach is not going to leak out and cause the animal to be a treifa, non-kosher animal. But if the needle is in the hovlila, then it would be a problem. And the thing is that the names of these stomachs changed. They switched the one name for the other name, and now, now, so you got to know which one is which because it's a change in halacha. So it would be a difference in if the animal is called a treifa, which means that the animal is damaged, is sick. It's not, which makes it not kosher. Not only it's not kosher, its milk is not kosher. It's and so on and so forth. Now, so that's another change. And then Rava bar Yosef says there's another thing that's called Bavel and Borsif. These also have changed. The name Bavel, Babylon, is changed with Borsif. Borsif is Bavel. I mentioned to you yesterday that it seems to me that Bavel is the country, and Borsif must be some type of a city or neighborhood. And the reason I mentioned that is based on the Taisus over here. It doesn't say that exactly, but it implies that. And the reason it implies that is the Gemara says, what do you need this for? You need to know what's Bavel, what's Borsif, because it applies to Gittin, the laws of Gittin. Rashi over here says, what is the laws of Gittin? What makes a difference if it's Bavel or Borsif, if they call the city, the country, this name or not this name? So Rashi says that the difference is that they had to be sure a get is a very serious type of it's a very serious document. It's not about $100 someone lent or he didn't lend 100. This is a very serious document that could lead to mamzerus. If the get is not a valid get, if the divorce document is not valid, then the next person, another man, marries this woman who has this get, and he marries her. It's not a valid get. He's marrying a married woman, which is a death penalty sin, and the children that they have are going to be mamzerim. They're going to be bastards. So the basically the laws of Gittin was very serious. And the one of the laws was that get needs to be written in for the right person. It has to be written for that specific person. You can't take a generic get from what's called LegalZoom or something. What's that website that has all the documents? Just buy it for $2, $2.50, and you have your divorce document. Hand it over. No, it has to be written lishma for the right person, and so therefore,
an interesting shaila. One moment, so as a question, if you use a form get from the computer, but you're inserting the names of the people and the matching up to the ksuba, to whatever it is, you're now putting in the direct attention so that you have a completed document when it's printed out, when it comes out of the printer. It's now a fully formed, directed get. Are you saying, I don't know, maybe it is. They've already ruled on this. I just want to know, are you saying that's not enough? Or does every time you go for a get, they start from the very beginning?
They write the get from scratch.
From scratch.
Yeah.
And I've been wondering, they're all handwritten then. It's not.
So it says v'katav la. Somebody has to write it for her. It doesn't say the computer writes it for her. Computer is some nondescript piece of.
Right. You're the person, but when you put in your name and you put in her name.
But you're not writing.
You're not writing when you're doing the keyboard? That's what I'm asking. Is that considered today's day and age? Is that considered
excuse
writing?
me, Isaac, you had said initially a pre-printed form that I insert the names.
Yes.
So it's not complete.
Yes.
So the form was written, it's a generic form. So it's not v'katavla. Katavla means from the beginning, you write the entire thing.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Again, we're not really learning the laws of divorce here, but it's kind of, it's an interesting thing. Anyway, the bottom line is that one of the ways they would get around this problem and of knowing if it was done, not getting around the problem, it has to be done right. But how would they know if it was done right? Was that they made a rule whenever you bring a get, which was commonly done, that there would be someone who was sent because people weren't living in the same city, in the same country. It was very hard to travel. So they would send the shliach, they would send someone to give the get to the wife. So when he would come, it was the person would bring the get, and he would have to say, "B'fanai nichtav, b'fanai nechtam." That it was done in front of me, it was written in front of me, and then signed in front of me. Now, what does that help? That he says that it was signed in front of him, because then the people are going to ask, "And was it written for this specific person?" And he's going to be able to answer, "Yes, I saw it being written. Yes, it was written for that. Was it done in front of me? And it was done for this specific person." So, in other words, the goal is to find out if it was done l'shma for that person and those people, and the answer is yes. Now, so that was if someone came from outside of Israel. But if you brought a get from Eretz Yisrael, then you weren't worried about that, because the people in Eretz Yisrael knew the laws very well. People outside of Israel, that's where people were a little flaky, and the laws very unclear, very, well, they weren't so knowledgeable in the laws, and therefore they made this rule. Now, there was another reason why they specifically that they made a rule that you have to say b'fanei nechtam when you come from outside of Eretz Yisrael, or because you're not necessarily going to have witnesses that are going to know the signature of these people, and therefore they're not going to be able to notarize it, so to speak. And so if this guy says "Fanei nechtam," he's so to speak notarizing it. It was written in front of him, so that would be another reason why when you bring a get from outside Eretz Yisrael, you're not going to have the people aren't around, aren't local. It's going to be hard to find them to someone who knows them to notarize it. So those are the two reasons of this. Anyway, bottom line is that if you switch the name Bavel to now, Bavel had the same law as Israel, because Bavel and Babylon, everyone was as knowledgeable. People were knowledgeable just like in Israel. In fact, some of the greatest yeshivas were in Babylon. Nerdah and Surah, and there were huge yeshivas there, maybe even greater than Pumbedisa, right? Pumbedisa. These yeshivas were probably the greatest. Were the greatest yeshivas of all time, and therefore, they knew that people in Bavel knew the halachas. It wasn't like living somewhere in in some other country where no one knows anything. They're far from having Jewish education.
Hicks.
Which country? What?
No, I said Hicks.
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 But in Bavel they knew everything. The problem is Borsif was some city that was near Bavel, but it wasn't. But it didn't have. It didn't. People were not knowledgeable. So if you mix the two names up, it could be a big problem, because it comes to get. He came from Bavel. He came from Borsif. There's a big difference. He came from Bavel. You don't have to say b'fanei nechtam that it was written in front of you, it was signed in front of you. When you come and bring, you're the emissary, and you're bringing a get from another place, then you would need to say that it was in front of you. So that's the understanding. That's the way Rashi learns this Gemara, and that's the difference. Now, Taisus does bring a Rashi in Masechta Shabbos that gives another interpretation. The other interpretation is that you might have wrote on the get the wrong city. That if the name changed of the city, so it was Bavel, now it's Borsif, or it was Borsif, now it's Bavel, then that's the problem. That we're afraid that you need to know, make sure you know the new names, because that's what you got to write on the get. Otherwise, the get won't be valid. It'll be an invalid get. Now,
you're going to write on the Gulf of Mexico when it should have been on the Gulf of America.
So anyway, So Taisus doesn't like that pshat. He says because Babylon is a country, it's not a city. You're supposed to write the city. So he says that Bavel is a country, and therefore you don't write a country in the get. So he doesn't like that pshat, that interpretation, that if you mix Bavel and Borsif, that would not be the meaning here, that you're going to ruin the get because the get, you wrote the wrong city. You didn't, because Bavel is, you don't write in a get. So that can't be the meaning. But Taisa doesn't say Borsif is the name of a country. He just says Bavel is the name of a country. If he said Borsif is the name of a country, then I would say Borsif is also a country. So therefore, I'm assuming that Borsif must be some type of city, probably a city, and Bavel is where it's is the name of a country, and that's why Tosfos doesn't like this pshat, and therefore, when they switch Bavel with Borsif, it must be the other interpretation that has to do with the fact that, do you have to say that it was written before me, or was it just, or was it, and it was signed before me, or do you not have to say that? And that's another difference. So we had 5 differences, things that the names changed, and that's applicable in different halachis, different halachic rules. Okay, then we had the Mishnah, and the Mishnah had said different opinions about the hadassim, haravos, how many do you need? And maybe we should just start the Mishnah again. I'm just going to start from the Mishnah, the top line on page 34a. 34a, the top line, Rebbe, the Mishnah. Let's see, does everyone, Avram, do you have the place? 34a?
Yeah,
Okay.
34.
Mishnah. It starts with Rabbi Yishmael.
You mean
See that?
34B.
34b. Did I say 34a? I'm sorry. 34b, the Mishnah, Rebbe Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael. You got it, Avram? Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Rabbi Yishmael, Shleisha Hadassim, Shtei Aravos. That Rabbi Yishmael says you need to have 3 Hadassim and you need to have 2 Aravos. And then he says 1 lulav echad, v'esrog echad, but 1 lulav, 1 esrog. Afilu shnaim ketumim. Now the hadassim, even if 2 of them the tops are cut off, one is not cut off, that's going to be kosher. And we'll see in the Gemara that that's not so simple. But what does he hold? Is it the problem if it's cut off, or it's not a problem? 2 can be cut off, 1 can't. Like what? Where does he come up with his rules? And so, but that's Rabbi Yishmael. That's the way the Mishnah says his opinion. We'll see in the Gemara that he retracts from his opinion. But the Mishnah says it that way. That's his original opinion. Reb Tarfon says that you don't need them to have the tops. The hadassim, even 3 of them the 3 are katum. They're cut off on the tops. That's not a problem. And Rabbi Akiva says that the numbers you got off. All you need is 1 each. Rabbi Akiva just like lulav and esrog, everyone agrees is 1. The same thing is hadas is 1 and arava is 1 also. So Rabbi Akiva comes and argues with these 2 opinions, and he says that all you need is 1 hadas, 1 arava.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
If it's so easy to make a mistake that Rabbi Akiva can come along and say what he said, how come it just doesn't add the extra word when they were learning this? Why don't they just say 1 and 1 and 3 and 2? 3 hadassim and 2 aravas, and to make it so that there's not room to make such an error, so that you have people arguing on both sides.
I'm not really sure I understand what you're asking. What are you asking? That his wording is a little wordy. He's
No, I'm saying when the rabbis said their opinions in the Mishnah, so that there wouldn't be room to make a mistake, why didn't the rabbis just add an extra word in the Mishnah and say 1 lulav, 1 esrog, 2 aravos, and 3 hadassim, and that would eliminate the possibility of Rabbi Akiva coming along and saying 1 and 1 and 1 and 1.
Oh, so you're asking why don't they just write the final halacha, not the opinions? Is that what you're asking?
No.
Why don't they write the final law? What?
Well, sort of. Yeah, help me, Ezra.
What he's saying is, why are they leaving out words that would completely describe what they want?
Right.
What word should it add?
one hadas, one arava, one this, where this is explained what it is, as opposed to saying one and one of this and one of that.
Why don't they just say,
Not really sure.
why don't
I'm
they just,
following. Look at the beginning of the Mishnah.
why, like
The-
Rabbi Ishmael says, three hadassim and two aravas, and one
Yeah.
lulav and one esrog.
Is that
So
good?
yeah, that's good, but why is there room for Rabbi Akiva to come along and say one and one and one and one? Why doesn't
Well, he's
that?
arguing. Why? We appreciate his view. What do you mean? Why don't you want
So
him to
what
have
he's-
his view?
So what he's saying is, why doesn't he say one hadas, one arava,
Oh,
instead of,
symmetrically. The first start with Hadas, then go to Arava, then go to Lulav one, then go to Esrig. Is that you want it to be in the same order? Is that what you're
No,
asking?
or
no, I'm
put
asking
the
why
word
does
that's missing?
where Rabbi Ishmael's learning 3 and 2 and 1 and 1, why doesn't from where Rabbi Ishmael is saying it, why doesn't the whole Mishnah say it said that there's not room for Rabbi Akiva to come along and make a mistake?
Who says he made a mistake? First of all, Rabbi Kiva didn't make no mistake. He holds you only need one. He's not making a mistake.
That's his
Oh,
opinion.
His opinion is one. Okay.
Isn't Rabbi Akiva usually one of the ones that we follow?
The law, the rule is that halacha kerebi Akiva mechave roi. The halacha follows Rabbi Akiva when he's arguing with one person, but not when he's arguing with a group.
So here he's arguing with Rabbi Ishmael, but we don't follow Rabbi Akiva here.
Well, not really. He's arguing with Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Shmuel. Both of them hold you need 3, at least in the Mishnah.
Oh,
right?
okay.
So
All
that
right.
would be a reason why, Rabbi Kiva wouldn't be followed. Now, the thing is, Rabbi Shmuel does retract from his view, but nevertheless, there are other rabbis that that follow Reb Tarfon. Well, let's see the Gemara. Normally, it's hard to ask too many questions on the Mishnah before you do the Gemara. And then sometimes it's hard to ask questions until you really know the chapter, because the whole chapter is talking about lulav, ravas, hadassim, esrogim. So in a certain sense, it's hard to really ask solid questions until you really have the whole picture.
But
Definitely
there are no there
It's
but
it's
there aren't
cute.
there aren't other rabbis that follow Rabbi Akiva here.
in the Mishnah. But
Yeah.
there are Gemaras, there are other opinions of rabbis. We just don't have their names in the Mishnah.
It's cute for me to think of the questions that come to me when the Mishnah, not that we're really asking you to answer. It's good for you to say, oh, good, we're going to get to the Gemara. We're going to get to the Gemara. And then when the Gemara identifies that same issue that I had, just feels nice. Well, I came up with that question.
Right.
And you see how it's going to play out. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, bottom line is let's do a little of the Gemara. So Tanya Rabbi Yishmael Omer. So the Gemara brings a brisa, and the brisa is this opinion of Rabbi Yishmael. It quotes the same rabbi, and it gives the pasuk. Rabbi Yishmael says, "Pri Eitz Hadar, echod kapais tamarim echod anaf eitz avos shloisha arvei nachal shtayim." What was I reading over here? What I was reading was that Rabbi Yishmael here, he doesn't just say aravos hadassim, esrog lulav. He actually brings the pasuk, and he brings in the pasuk that it says pri eitz hadar. It sounds like one fruit. Kapas tamarim sounds like one. Then anaf eitz avos shloisha, 3 words. Anaf eitz avos. Sounds 3 words. Sounds like 3.
So why don't I do
Arvei nachal, plural. The shtayim sounds like 2.
Rabbi,
So
why don't I do that the same thing for the others? If he's going to count words, why can't I count words for the other things as well?
So this is a very good question. Especially you want to say that esregim, you should need three. Pre-eitz hadar, right? You should have three esregim. And Tosfos asked this question.
Well, no, I'm asking this question on, kapot temarim. You said that there was it's without the vav.
Right.
So I could read that as one. But
One.
I can use the fact that there are two words there that are listing the definition of what it is as being the reason why I'm having two of them.
Words. Right. So therefore you're not bothered with one lulav because the word kapas means one, and the fact that it uses two words is teaching you something about kafas and so on, and therefore you need the two words for a lesson. So there, you're not surprised that you have one lulav. Is that what you're saying? But esrog, you are a little bothered with, because esrog, it says pre-eitz hadar. Yeah, is that your question? That if you want to tell me hadassim, so hadassim has three words. So we're going to learn three hadassim. Arovos, arvei nachal, two words. But pre-eitz hadar is three words, and we only use one esrog. That's a little surprising. Kapas tamarim, you want to say, means one, and you need to have the fact that it says kafos has to be bound, or there's room, or they have to be not bound, they have to be close together. So that would be a reason why it says kapos. So that would be an understanding why it has two words. Well, Tosfos is very bothered with this whole discussion here, this way of figuring it out, because there's really two ways of learning. One, as Ezra hinted, he says, if you have a reason for those extra words, then you can't learn how many from it, because there's a reason why it has to say those words. So you can't say that those words are extra in order to teach you the number, because you're using something for those words. So if you want to learn that way, then you would be stuck with anaf eitz avos as well, because you actually use those words to teach you other things. What do you learn from anaf eitz avos? So it has to be the anaf, that it's eitz, that the branch is all anaf. It's all about being covered with leaves. The branches cover its stem. That's anaf eitz. So it needs to say anaf eitz. And in other words, the word avos is to teach you that it has to be braided. So you need those words. So how are we going to learn three from that? Right? Because you need those. If that's the way you're learning, that in other words, whenever you use if you're using words to teach you something else, then you don't understand it to be telling you an amount. And Tosfos says, and I'll prove it to you. At least this is one way of learning Tosfos. The commentaries, they struggle with this Tosfos because the wording is a little complicated. But one of the ways of learning Tosfos is Tosfos says, and I'll prove it to you. And what's his proof? That why don't you use three esregim? It must be because the reason why it says pre-eitz hadar is because it needs to say eitz, because that the tam eitz and the tam pri are equal, that the taste of the tree, of the bark, and the taste of the fruit are equal. And that's why it has to say pre-eitz hadar, and therefore you're not going to use three esregim. And if that's true, then here also, why do you use three hadassim? If esrog, you're not going to darshan, you're not going to expound on the fact that it has three words and say you need three esregim because you're using those words to teach you a law. So the same thing should be about anaf eitz avos, that you're using those words to teach you laws. So this is Tosfos's question, and he leaves it unanswered. So Tosfos is bothered with how Rabbi Yishmael is really learning. Now, the way Rashi is learning, Rashi seems to be not so bothered with this problem. Rashi seems to hold that you're allowed to have, you could still learn the amount, even though you're using the words for something else. We saw that before, where on page 33b, we saw this idea that Rashi said, even though it says Arve Nachal, but Arve is not telling you it has to be from a Nachal. It's better if it's from a Nachal, but the others are also kosher. So in other words, the bottom Rashi over there, he says, Arve Nachal Agdeles ala Nachal. That, in other words, that brisa agrees with the next brisa that says Arve Nachal Ein Li Ela Arve Nachal Shabal Shal Har Minayin Tam Arve Nachal Mikol Makom. That the first brisa agrees with the second brisa. That it says Arve, and Rashi learned you could learn it includes this. It includes Arve Nachal. It should be Nachal is ideal. Also, if it's grows on the field that's not in a stream, it's also going to be kosher. So Rashi seems to hold that you could learn a few things. It could imply a few things from the pasuk. It doesn't have to be exclusive. You could learn that it's better for a nachal. You could learn that the others are also good. Possibly Rashi learns that way. So why was it for a pre-Eitz Hadar kapos tamarim? How does he know one? I would say because pre implies just one. Kapas implies just it's telling you one. The others, it has three words. It implies that allows you to learn two. And then you could say anaf maybe also implies one. I guess you could ask. It's not so simple. I don't know. We'd have to see if any commentaries answer Taisus's question. But this is, thank you, Ezra. This is Taisus's question, and we'll have to look in the Rishonim if any of the other commentaries have an answer to Taisus's question. But this is the. I just translated to you the way Rashi learns the Gemara. That kapas sounds like one. Anaf eitz avos. Each word means one. Anaf one, eitz one. Avos one, altogether three, and then the Aravos are also, it's Arve Nachal two. Okay, now comes the next statement of Rabbi Shmuel. Even if you have two that are cut off on the Hadassim and one is not Kotum, it's still going to be kosher. Reb Tarfon says Shloisha, that you need three, but all of them could be cut. Rabbi Kiva, I make shame shalul v'echad v'asru gechad kachad asechad b'arava achas. Then we have Rabbi Kiva, the same way he said it, the same thing that he said in the Mishnah, he says in the Gemara, in the Brisa. The Gemara brings the Brisa. Okay, so you got the three opinions, and we have a little more understanding of Rabbi Shmuel, even though we have maybe a little question on Rabbi Shmuel because of the Taisus's question, how to learn it, how does he come up with these numbers? Because it doesn't seem to be to fit with all of the cases, but nevertheless, this is the way the Brisa explains it. And so we have Rabbi Shmuel, we have Rabbi Tarfon, we have Rabbi Akiva. Now, the Gemara says that Amalai Rabbi Eliezer said to him, maybe the esrog should be together with them ba'aguda achos, in one binding, that you should bind the esrog with the lulav hadassim and aravos. Amrit. So you say pre-Eitz Hadar v'kapos tamarim. You could answer that. Does it say pre-Eitz Hadar and kapos tamarim? Kapos. It doesn't have the vav. It doesn't say and kapos tamarim. It implies that you don't put them together in the bundle. So in other words, we bundle up we bind together the hadassim, the aravos with the lulav. Maybe the esrog should also be bound together. No, it doesn't say pre-Eitz Hadar v'kapos tamarim. Sort of like sets it aside. The last two, it has a vav in front of it, meaning and. Do this with that in the other one. That you put them together. They go together. The first one doesn't match with the second, but the second matches with the third and the fourth. So 2, 3, and 4 go together. The first one, which is the esrog, it doesn't join the others. So that's Rabbi Eliezer's point that that you don't bind it together. Now, an interesting question is what would happen if you did bind it together? Would you fulfill the mitzvah if you bound the esrog with the lulav, hadassim, and haravis? But the Gemara doesn't mention that. The Gemara just says that you're not supposed to bind it together. Now, then the Gemara says, seemingly it's a continuation of Rabbi Eliezer's statement. And how do you know that it's ma'akiv, that one is ma'akiv one another, that you need all four? Maybe it's Rabbi Eliezer saying, actually, I'm not sure if this is Rabbi Eliezer talking. Could be, maybe it's just the Brisa speaking. The Brisa brought the three opinions. Then it brought Rabbi Eliezer that you're not supposed to bind the esrog together. You could say that it's really the Brisa continue. Okay, so the Brisa asked this question that maybe, how do you know that ma'akvin zeh, that if you're missing one, you don't get a mitzvah for doing the other three. You're missing one of those species. So the Gemara says, Talmud Sukkah, that you says that we divide that word in two, that we darshan v'lakachta tam, that or v'lakach tam. There's two versions in Rashi. If it's v'lakach tam or v'lakachta tam, basically means the same thing. You have to take something that's complete. Means you need to do the mitzvah properly. It uses the word v'lakachtam, and that means it's got to be a complete mitzvah. That if you miss one, you don't fulfill the mitzvah at all. You can't make a bracha if you're missing the others. So the Gemara says, now the Gemara asks on Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael, manafshach. Again, manafshach is a term that is used for. I said this yesterday. It's used to say like you have to choose what you're holding. Pick your side. Manafshach. Which way is? If you say this way, it doesn't make sense, and if you say that way, it doesn't make sense. So choose whichever way you do it. Not pick your side, but even whichever side you choose, it doesn't flow. That's what manafshach is used for. Literally, it means what's your opinion? What's your opinion? Manafshach. What's you? What's your soul? What's your opinion? Your thought?
It translates it as whichever way you
do it. It doesn't fit. Yeah.
Yeah, like which in other words, whichever way you look at it is
a problem. Yeah, well, that's what I said.
But the three words, it uses the three words to translate. It says whichever way you.
Yeah. Okay.
In other words, whichever way you look.
Yeah. Well, I that's the way I translated it, but I think literally it doesn't really mean that. I think manafshach is what is your thought, and it uses it in that context. But okay. Ish layman by if you need complete.
Is the shorish the word nefesh?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the shorish. So manafshach. What is your opinion? How could you say what you're saying? Ish layman boy, if you need complete, li boy nami kulu, you should need all of them to be complete. Eloi boy shleiman, if you don't need complete ones, even one shouldn't need to be complete. So, what is your real opinion? How are you saying you need one complete and two that aren't complete? Where are you getting your opinion from? How could you say either way? You have to choose which side you're doing. You hold the need to be complete, then do all of them complete. You hold they don't need to be, then none of them complete. How are you coming up with this intermediate level where there's no source? Where do you have such a source for such a thing? It only mentions it once about Aravis. So the Gemara says, Amar Bira says, Bira's an uncommon name. in the Gemara, but here and there you find it. So Bira says, Amar Rabami Chazar Bai, says the name of Rabami Chazar Bai Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael retracted. Now, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, halacha Reb Tarfon. So Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, the halacha follows Reb Tarfon. Halacha follows Reb Tarfon. The Uzda Shmuel Ataime, and Shmuel goes according to his reason. So what did Reb Tarfon hold? Tarfon said you need 3 hadassim, and they could all be cut off. The Amar Lu Shmuel. Oh, you know what? I should explain. Reb Yishmael retracted. But what is his conclusion? He retracted, meaning he's not stuck in this problematic rounds where he's saying 2 and 1. No, he retracts. But what is his final view? So the final view of Rabbi Yishmael is that even 1 is kosher. So 1 is kosher. It has to be hadar, it has to be complete, but even 1 would be kosher, which sort of sounds like he's holding like Rabbi Akiva. But
it says here, Rabbi Yishmael retracted. So he says the authorities disagreed whether the meaning here is that he originally required 3 and now he requires only 1, or that he originally required complete branches and now he permits severed as well.
So I'm just following Rashi at
That's
this
what
point.
says Rashi. And Rashi, Rabbeinu Yonasan, and Ritzvah.
The Rashi says both pshatim?
He gives the 3 names at the end of the whole thing that I just said.
So I'm telling you that Rashi says that he holds 1 is kosher. That's the way Rashi is translating Rabbi Shmuel. But maybe we'll do the Rishonim. Maybe we'll do some of the other commentaries tomorrow. But Rashi learns this way, that Chazar by Rabbi Shmuel retracts. And what is his opinion? His opinion is that he makes it kosher, just 1. And that would be the way Rabbi Akiva says it, that hadassim, all you need is 1. It has to be beautiful, meaning it has to be complete. But he retracts from needing 3. All you need is 1, and that 1 should be a kosher hadas. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel halacha Reb Tarfon. So the halacha follows Reb Tarfon. It says the name of Shmuel. The halacha follows Reb Tarfon. You need 3. They don't have to be complete. They could be cut off. Shmuel goes according to his reasoning. Damalu Shmuel, because Shmuel said, Lahanu, the Mezabnu Asa, those people that sell the hadassim, there were hadassim merchants, and he said to them, Ashvu v'zabinu, sell at a reasonable price, sell them cheaper. Don't lift up your price and don't make your price expensive. Make it cheap. So Ashru, make a cheaper price for Zabino and sell them. The Eloi, and if you're not going to sell cheap, Darishna Lachu Kerabi Tarfon. He's threatened them. He said, if you're not going to sell cheap, I'm going to darshan, Darishna. It's like I'm going to darshan Lachu to everyone, to them, that Kerabi Tarfon, that the hadassim could even be cut off. And so, make sure that you sell the reasonable price, because otherwise, I'm gonna mess your whole business up. Because what happens is, if you could get the cut off ones, they probably have them all over the place. And I guess the reason is because once you cut once, you can't reuse it. You can't use that same stalk if you have a long hadassim. But if you could use cut off ones, you could keep on cutting, I guess. That's what I'm thinking. You could keep on cutting on the same stalk. So the Gemara says, oh, my time is up here. Let me see. My time, and what's the reason that Shmuel says that you should, why did he say that he's going to tell them the halachas like Reb Tarfon? Ilema mishum demeko. If it's because Reb Tarfon is lenient, and v'lidraish lahu Rabbi Akiva demekol tfei. Why doesn't he just say that I'll paskin like Rabbi Akiva? That's even more lenient. It must be that I'm not just threatening. It must be that that's the real halacha, and that's why he wants to paskin. Like that's why he's saying like really the halacha is Reb Tarfon. I'm not saying anything if you sell cheap, but if you don't say cheap, I'm going to say because how do I know the halacha is like Reb Tarfon? So we because Shmuel, how do we see that Shmuel really held that way? Because he made this threat to them, and he could have said the halach is like Rabbi Akiva, but he didn't say the halach is like Rabbi Akiva. And I'll paskin to everyone the halach is like Rabbi Akiva. All you need is one. He said no. I'm gonna tell everyone that the halach is like Reb Tarfon. It must be that that's the correct halach. It wasn't just a threat. In other words, what the Gemara is debating here, what the Gemara is the dialogue here, the thought process is that was Shmuel was he mainly making a threat, but it wasn't 100% correct that the halacha is this way, just he was threatening them? Or is that the real halacha, that it's Reb Tarfon? And it's a real threat. Like I definitely could tell them that the halacha is like Reb Tarfon. And the Gemara is assuming that it must be that's not just some threat. This is a real deal. The halacha is like Reb Tarfon. Because otherwise, if it wasn't that the halach is like Reb Tarfon, he could have said the halach is like Rabbi, that I'll paskin to them that the halach is like Rabbi Akiva. All they'll need is one, not three. The Gemara says, no. That's not why he gave that. He made it a threat because it's much easier to find three broken ones than one complete one. Three that are cut off are very easy to find. And if he darshaned like Rabbi Tarfon, but by saying Reb Tarfon, it actually makes it flows very well. It's very easy. In other words, that's a good threat. If he paskins like Rabbi Akiva, they're still going to need to buy. It's still going to be hard for them to find because it's hard to find ones that are not cut off. So if he had paskin, if he said like Rabbi Akiva, so you don't really see it from that other story. But this is Rabbi Yehuda says the name of Shmuel. The halacha is like Reb Tarfon. Okay, we're going to stop here.
Rabbi,
Yes,
one more thing. It says over here that the reason that he's able to say that the halach of cut off with regards to the ketumim bahadas, says the sages permitted. He brings down Rabbeinu Yonasan. The sages permitted use of a severed hadas since at times it grows that way naturally. When, for instance, when a berry grows on the top.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, that's a interesting insight from one of the Rishonim.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead. Okay, very good.
Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Day, everyone. Okay, sei gesund.